Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ed Arnold, and I'm Vice President of Products here at Leverage Point. I'd like to welcome all of you to our monthly webinar series of thought leadership in the area of value-based strategy. Leverage Point provides the only software solution for value-based pricing. We offer a cloud-based collaboration platform that supports product innovation as well as sales enablement that changes the way companies create, communicate, and capture value. Find out more about us from our website, leveragepoint.com. Now, during the webinar, if you have any specific questions or comments, please feel free to enter them in the right-hand panel in the questions section. Later on, we'll respond to as many as we can. Time to announce today's speaker. Coming to us live from the UK today is Harry Macdivitt. Harry is currently Director of Axia Value Solutions, where he provides training and pricing expertise to clients worldwide. And not only that, but he's author of multiple books in the strategic pricing space, one of which you see here, Value-Based Pricing, which we highly recommend. And not only that, he's also a visiting academic at Strathclyde University Business School. Needless to say, we're very fortunate to have him with us today. Welcome, Harry.
And thank you very much indeed, Ed, for that wonderful, delightful introduction from a cold and wet and snowy Glasgow. So thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here. What I want to look at in the next half an hour or so is just a few things in and around the whole area of value. It's a vast subject, and it's a fascinating subject. I want to just look at why capturing value is so important and how do we actually go about doing this. Once we've actually done it, what do we do with the information that we've got? And I just want to show you how you use value in a couple of live and pretty current case studies. One looking at wooden furniture, one looking at theft of copper wire. I just came across this one last week in South Africa where I was working. And then, of course, the sort of key takeaways at the end. And as Ed had already said, there's a Q&A session at the end, which is live, and I'd love to hear your various comments and thoughts. So next slide, please. So here's a basic question. Are you actually leaving money on the table right now? This is a kind of economist question. And economists are great fans of curves like the demand curve, illustrated on the next couple of slides. So that red line that sits at the back there is an idealized demand curve. And if you're doing this, you sure are leaving money on the table. And what is this? Well, having only one price for the totality of your market. A single price can't possibly capture all the business that you're going to get. And inevitably, you're going to be leaving money on the table. And these two triangles above that green box and to the right of that green box just show you the extent to which you could be losing opportunities. So the next slide just looks at this in a bit more detail. By segmenting the market, if we can segment the market cleverly and on value, then we can create additional price points. And the advantage of that is that it's going to attract us more customers, perhaps attracted now by different propositions at different prices. And of course, because of that, it's going to give us some more money in our pockets. How do we do it? We do it by differentiating our products and services on customer value. The next slide here demonstrates this graphically. In the first one, if you remember, there was only one price, and that was the price represented by the green box, 3 in this particular slide. But if we can find new segments, 1 and 2, and 4 and 5, just have a look at how much more of the area under this demand curve that we are actually creating. And also look at what we're now leaving on the table, a series of very small triangles. So what we've effectively done is we've expanded the market, and we have provided ourselves with the opportunity of producing and selling a range of differently priced and differently specified products for each of a number of different segments. So by identifying Yet by identifying more segments, we're really leaving less money on the table. And the more distinct and actionable segments that we can create, the more that we're going to increase overall size of the market, and the less money we're going to leave on the table. So, next slide, please, Ed. So, here's a key question. What is value? And how do we actually identify it? And that's what I want to spend a little bit of time looking at this afternoon. I love this graphic. If a Martian were to ask me, what is customer value? What would you say? Well, my answer would be anything that's going to help a customer increase his profitability, either through reducing his costs or by increasing his revenues. That is value. But in a manner, and this is terribly important, in a manner that gives them an overall great feeling of satisfaction. And this leads us straight into our main tool, which we call the Value Triad. The Value Triad is a framework that we adopt both in consultancy work and in training work to help identify what the key aspects of value actually are. I'm going to show you a little bit about how we apply this in the cases that follow. But the main components of the Value Triad include, first of all, revenue gains. Now, revenue gains are anything that we can do for the customer that's going to enable him to achieve higher prices or better productivity or perhaps higher market share. Any of these things are going to increase his revenues. So that's the first leg of this stool, if you like. The second leg is cost reduction. And of course, in cost reduction, this is looking at things again from the customer's perspective, not from ours, but from the customer's perspective. Anything that we can do to help him reduce his labour costs, either by making it unnecessary to hire expensive labour, or perhaps by training the labour better so that they become more efficient, and so achieving efficiency gains, or perhaps reducing the complexity of our products, or perhaps by using cheaper materials, or perhaps by using cheaper capital. All of those things are going to achieve for us a cost reduction. Now, combined and collectively, revenue gains and cost reduction generate for us enhanced profitability, greater income. Now, these are the tangible aspects of value, but there's a third element, which is the intangible area, and that's the area of emotional contribution. Now, this is absolutely vital in all transactions, whether it's a B2B transaction or a B2C transaction. Quite simply, businesses don't sell to businesses. People in businesses sell to people in businesses. And so we need to take into account the people piece of value by removing hassle, by providing comfort, by increasing confidence, the whole bunch of these things that are important. And collectively, these three things, revenue gains, cost reduction, emotional contribution, each of those is value to the customer. Now, I've got to stress that when we do this analysis, we're not looking at value to us, we're looking at value to the customer. And a bit later on, I'll show you one or two constructs that will help make this a little clearer. So, moving on, the value triad factors are the things that impact on our customers, our clients, businesses, both economically and emotionally, on the business and its managers, or for that matter, upon the consumer. We can apply it just as easily in consumer situations as we can in B2B. The Value Triad framework provides us with a structured way of thinking about these factors. What we do is we try to identify every piece of value, every atom of value that the customer is seeking. So we don't stop until we have uncovered everything. Now, we may be uncovering stuff that's really not that vital for one customer, but that very thing may be crucial to another. And we use the Value Triad until we've identified every single thing that matters. Now, this is actually hard work, guys, but it's important work. Because if you don't do that, your value propositions will be deficient in some material respect. So we try to identify every aspect of the product that we can that contributes to customer value. And these red arrows basically tell us we've got to go round an iteration process until we are confident that we've got a hold of everything that actually matters. So you keep asking yourself this so what question. Do you know what? This so what question sounds aggressive, but it really isn't. What we're doing is we're asking ourselves the question that your customer is going to ask at some point down the road. The so what question says, so what does this really matter to the customer? And you keep asking that question, guys, until you have squeezed every particle of juice out of the situation that you can, and you're sure, really sure, that you've got everything that really matters. And once you've got to that point, then the final piece is to link them all together using customer impact analysis. Now, the next slide is actually going to show you just a few cases where we're using customer impact analysis. These are a sample of the kinds of companies that we're working on at the moment. I won't go into them in great detail because you're going to get a copy of this a little bit later. But the point here is the main structure of this framework. On the left-hand side, you have the various attributes, if you like, specifications. The next piece in the middle, which I have defined as whimsically so what to the power n, basically means that we need to keep asking that question as many times as it takes in order to get a response that we need. And that then leads us down finally to customer impact. What's the impact of this issue on a customer's business? So moving on. I want to just have a look at a couple of case studies. These case studies are really quite instructive in a number of different ways. Case one is a small company that we work with who manufacture wooden furniture. Now, this is really an interesting case because it's a very traditional business in the United Kingdom making bespoke wooden furniture. And this company manufacture furniture for the hotel industry. The next slide just gives you an illustration of the kinds of furniture that this company produces. They made beds, they made cabinets, they made wardrobes, they made tables, all sorts of stuff. But the key thing was that they made these to a very, very high standard. I was asked to work with them to help them to improve their marketing, improve their overall value proposition. And of course, as I often do in seminars of that sort, I asked them, what do they make? And the answer was, well, we make furniture, we make wooden furniture. And I said, well, okay, but what do you really make? And what do you really sell? And they said, well, furniture, we make furniture to a very high standard. We make it from oak and teak and walnut and mahogany and beech, all the hardwoods. We have an adhesive shop which has low use of volatile organic compounds, so we don't have any pollution issues there. We send our people on training courses to learn from the masters about how to design good quality wooden furniture. And the sales manager went on at some length about this. And he was frustrated with my next question, which was, well, yeah, that's great, but what do you really sell? And his answer showed his frustration. It was, what part of furniture don't you understand, you stupid Scotsman? He didn't say that, but that's what he was inferring, because the guy was English. So here's the issue. This is a company that was in trouble. They were not managing to achieve the results that they were looking for in the market. And when I asked them another question, which was, well, okay, what is it your customers are buying? The young lady to whom I addressed that question was utterly frustrated because her first comment was, well, they buy fur. And then she said, that's not what you're looking for, is it? And I said, no, it's not. What I'm really looking for is something a little bit deeper than that. So the next slide, please, Ed. My question to them was this. Who are your customers? And the answer was, well, the customers are hotels. And hotels buy high-quality furniture. And I asked the next question, which was, what is it that keeps the owner of the hotel, the manager of the hotel, off his sleep at night? And the answer was, well, the noise of the air conditioning, probably. everybody laughed, and they said, but yeah, really, what's the problem? And the issue really is one of achieving optimal occupancy in the hotel. Hotels are very much break-even oriented, so if you have less than a fixed number, you're not going to achieve a profit. So everybody wants to get to that nice sweet spot to the right of the break-even point. What contributes to that? Well, there's a whole bunch of different things. The menu, the quality of the waiting staff, the location, the general ambience of the place, and the rooms. The rooms have got to be attractive. And that's when the penny finally dropped. For 3 years, they had been selling on specification. And it was only today that they were waking up to the fact that they're not actually selling furniture at all. They're selling room occupancy. They're selling peace of mind. They're selling a whole bunch of other stuff other than wooden furniture. The vehicle just happens to be wooden furniture, but that delivers a whole lot of things which we can analyze through the value triad. So just have a quick look at this. Down the left-hand side of this model, you have attributes: high quality, durable materials, built to exacting standards. The products are designed ergonomically and aesthetically, and they make use of non-volatile compounds in manufacture. So let's just take one of those. Let's just take the top one. So what's the so what about high quality, durable materials? Well, they last longer. There resist wear and tear. They keep their looks for longer. So what? Well, it means you don't have to replace them often. You don't need to fix them as often. And of course, as the owner and manager of the hotel, we'll take pride in their appearance. So what's the impact? And this is where the rubber starts to hit the tarmac. This is where we can start to quantify some stuff. Because we don't need to replace the items so often, it's going to save or avoid capital spend. It's going to avoid operational costs if we don't have to repair and fix. And it's going to be attractive to the hotel guests. So this is how we use the customer impact analysis model. Pretty straightforward, easy to use, intuitive in fact. We're amazed at just how easily people pick this up in our seminars. And they love it because it immediately draws attention down to the things that really matter, and it kicks into touch. That's a rugby expression, guys. I'm sorry about that. It kicks into touch all the issues of it selling on specification and focuses people's minds on the real things, customer impact. And if we do this carefully and assertively, what will happen is that we will identify every customer impact. Not all will be important, not all should be included in any one given value proposition. But we've now got a list of things that we can choose from and select when it comes to discussions with the customer. These all become part of our value proposition. Now, how have we done this? Well, we've built them all from a detailed analysis of our product or service. But we go a lot further than that. We ask the next question, so what? How did it create value for our customers and for the customers of our customers? We need to prioritize these things and dollarize them, particularly the revenue gain and the cost reduction, the RG and the CR elements. So that's how we use the customer impact analysis. I guess we must have been talking about this to people for several years now, and the response that we get in our seminars is great. But what's actually even more interesting to us is once the seminars are over, people get back to us and say, do you know what, this actually transformed the way that we developed our value proposition. It transformed our ability to impact on our customers' businesses. And it allowed us a rational framework on which we could build our value-based price. So that's our customer impact analysis. Perhaps another case study might be interesting if we have time. This is one that I picked up last week in South Africa. We're working with a large telecoms company. I don't think I'm free to tell you which one it was. But a big issue in Africa, as it is in in other countries, whether they're emerging economies or not, is the theft of copper wire from electricity installations. It's a serious crime in many parts of Africa, and here's why. These installations are often remote, and because they're remote, they are usually protected by armed guards. And to my amazement and horror, it turns out that these guards are sometimes overpowered or even shot, might be murdered by the copper thieves. Now, the installations are providing power to municipalities, to other utilities, and to factories. But there is a black market for stolen copper wire. It's easy to sell it. And wire theft costs really in the order of millions of dollars every year to the utilities, and it causes severe disruption. That disruption, of course, is the responsibility of the utility to repair. Next slide, please, Ed. This gives you an indication of the layout. On the top left-hand side there, it just shows you an IP camera in situ. And then below that, and this is a schematic that I put off of the web recently. What that is showing is just simply the central location of the camera, and that signal is then sent back through an NOC. I understand that's a network operating center, back to the internet, and the information is then passed on to the police or security services, whatever that might be. So the next slide, please, Ed. The mobile operator provides network infrastructure and software to capture all these images at a good resolution and transmit them back to the team. And what's circled in red there is the contribution that this telecoms operating company produces. So what they're doing is their technology is right at the heart of this theft prevention system. So you could ask, so what? And the next table shows you the answer to that. Down the left-hand side, there's no human guards. The system enhances the continuity of supply. The system provides a reliable visual record and an instantaneous and unheard wireless alert to the security forces. So let's just take the supply continuity and move from left to right. Supply continuity, so what? Well, it minimizes or it eliminates service disruption. So what? And we keep on asking, if you remember, the so what to the power n. That means we ask it as many times as is necessary until we come down to the point where we can say, right, we're just about in a position where we can calculate this. And remember, it's from the client's perspective, not from your perspective as a vendor, but from the client's perspective. So it means there's no service downtime. It avoids the need to engineer troubleshooting or intervention. So the impact, well, it's going to save the cost of the reinstatement of service. So it's a cost reduction. It's going to save the cost of new copper. And as recently as yesterday, I checked this out, and that's $3.45 per pound, another cost reduction. And of course, it avoids hazardous visits by staff. That is hazardous to the staff. So that creates both a cost reduction and an emotional contribution to the company that uses this service. So again, each one of those can be prioritized in line with our understanding of our customers' needs. What they do is allow us to create good questions to ask the customer in a sales discussion. And the answer the customer's so what question, and more importantly, they give us an audit trail to explain in whatever detail we need to. So this is another example of many from the annals of value. So that's, I think, about it, apart from what are the takeaways. Well, here's a few. First of all, a single price and a single product is going to leave money on the table. How much depends on the shape of the demand curve and on the price point that you select. You can create different price points by offering a wider range of products, and that means either up-speccing or down-speccing products so that you've got something along the range. And these are aimed at segments who are looking for different, and notice, differential value. And by differential value, I mean value that you possess that's important to the customer, but is not copied by any of your competitors. Maximize the customer value you need to deliver using value triad analysis. The triad analysis lies at the heart of value creation and value analysis. Stop the customer asking the so what question by immunizing yourself against that by asking it yourself first. And then finally, assess the beneficial customer impacts using customer impact analysis and prioritize these. This is a bit that then leads us on to the value proposition and into a position where we can then start to craft a sensible value-based price. Okay, well that's me finished. Ed, are you still alive?
Yes, I am. I've been listening intently. These are fantastic stories, and I appreciate you sharing your expertise with us today, Harry.
Pleasure.
We have a few questions that have come in during your presentation, and just want to tell our other listeners that if you want to put a question in the queue right now, we'll be able to cover that in the time we have remaining. Before we get into the questions, though, I do want to make an announcement about our next webinar, which is coming up in just a few weeks on April 18th. We'll have Chris Provines, who is CEO of Value Vantage. He's going to be talking about issues in the healthcare industry, specifically quantifying and using value in the age of healthcare reform. I know we have a number of customers and colleagues who are in this industry who are dealing with the challenges there. There are many. That's going to be a great webinar, so look for an announcement for that shortly. And also, I do want to plug the Spring Professional Pricing Society Conference in San Francisco. That's coming up the first week of May, and some of the Leverage Point team will be there. So if you're there too, please drop by and say hello. And I'll just quickly give a shameless plug. If you are at the PPS and you want to learn more about value-based strategy, especially about value model building, I'll be doing a fun crash course on value modeling. So if you're in PPS, please drop by. All right, so let's get to the questions. And here on the slide, you'll see Harry's contact information if you want to get in touch with him directly. All right, so first question we have here. Does the value triad change for selling to governments in which revenue generation is not relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, that is a key question. We come across this in the United Kingdom and in Europe in healthcare because, of course, these are essentially selling to government businesses. And instead of using the revenue gain and cost reduction is obviously very important, so that would stay. But for revenue gain, we would tend to replace that with efficiency increase or improvements in efficacy. The revenue gain is not immediately relevant in the government situation, but we can analogize that with a different model.
All right. Here is another question. What advice do you have for reeling in customers who have been given aggressive pricing that are smaller customers without losing their business?
Give me that again, please.
What advice do you have for reeling in customers who have been given aggressive pricing that are smaller customers without losing their business?
Yeah, I think ultimately you get what you pay for in this world. There is a great temptation these days to go straight down the road of discounting as soon as a customer says it's too expensive. It's my experience and experience shared with working with thousands of people in seminars over the last 20 years or so that very often, if you stand your ground on pricing, but argue the point that you are delivering real top-end value, then most customers are sensible about this and will recognize that value. And although they won't like to pay the high prices, they will. What worries me a little bit here is if you capitulate too easily to a demand for a price, all this does is sets up a process of behavior in customers who think, well, we've got away with this once. Let's see if we can get away with it again and again and again. And that is a really challenging situation. Now, I've worked for many years with small and medium-sized businesses, and one of the big temptations for the small business is to consider themselves to be inferior, or at least seriously challenged by the big guys. And I'm sure some of the big guys would actually take a contrary view of this, that they're challenged by the small guys. But if you're a small company, it's a great temptation to cut your price just simply because you feel inferior and you feel as if you're a small business. I would counsel you not to do that. For all of the things I've said here, the issue is, can we really identify the value that matters to this particular customer? And we go through that process carefully and identify every piece of value that matters. Now, of course, there's going to be some companies out there, some customers out there, I call them price buyers, who really just couldn't care less about the value that you're offering. All they really want to know is, what's the price, what's the price, what's the price? And whatever price you give them, they'll tell you that somebody else has offered a lower price just that very morning. Well, walk away. They're a waste of time and a waste of space. Unless you absolutely have to have them, it's far better to focus on those people who really do understand your value and who will respond to a provable value proposition. A fairly detailed answer. I'm not sure if it hits the point, but I hope so.
No, very, very good answer, and I think it sort of relates to the different price segments that you showed earlier in the presentation, right? Knowing which type of customer you're talking to. Yeah. So here's another question, and this is sort of on the sales side of things. It goes, how much training do you need to provide to salespeople in order for them to effectively communicate value?
Yeah, that is such a terrific question, Ed. It really is. And it's a question, to be honest, I get asked almost every time there is a seminar going. I think the first point that I would make here is this. To me, salespeople are absolutely crucial in the process of winning good business and winning good business at a good price. But it's terribly easy for the salespeople to offer a discount, especially if they're not being given the right kind of support by their management. And the kind of support that's necessary here is for them to really understand how to go through the process of discerning value in the customer interview. I favour what we call a discovery process, so that instead of just showing up and throwing up, you sit down and face to face with the customer, or even better, side by side with the customer with a pot of coffee in front of you, and just talk about the business. Work out what really the pain points are, what the difficulties are. Because ultimately, you've really got to be able to do two things. You've got to be able to understand the customer in depth, and that means good questioning skills, but it also means good listening skills. I think that's one of the most important points. We do that in our value-based sales seminars. And the second thing is that the salespeople need to really understand value and what that value is, what it means to the customer. And again, that's where the Value Triad helps to give you a structured vehicle for bringing these two pieces together. I think there's an important point here, and perhaps I'm going to be a bit controversial in this, but when it comes to selling on value, there aren't any shortcuts. You can't just wing it. You just can't float in and assume that you're going to be able to have the right answer. If the customer's going to ask you, so what? And if you don't have a good answer to that so what question, guys, you're screwed. you've blown it. And that's why I make such a point about asking that so what question early in our value analysis. I think the second point related to that is that not every salesperson can be a value salesperson. And you probably have in your organizations right now 3 different types of salespeople. Some who really get it and who are doing it and haven't even bothered to tell you, but they're just good sales guys, and instinctively they go for value. There's another group of people who won't ever understand value. Even if hell freezes over, they will still go and they will deliver a detailed technical presentation which is devoid of any value arguments. And then there's a group in the middle who would like to know how to do the job better, and they're the ones that we'll have to train, because when we show them the value analysis tools, their eyes open wide and they realise that they've been missing something for years. Now, our final point here, and I was brought up as a salesperson working with 3M, and one of the things that we did a lot of was coaching. And that's something I don't see a fantastic amount of these days. Just have a meeting with a customer, watch by your boss, go into the car, sit down, have a detailed dissection of that, and coach your salespeople into the right way of dealing with things. And I think this is a fantastic way of building skills and building capability. But it does mean, of course, as a sales manager needs to understand value too.
Okay, no, that's a great answer, Harry. And one that's related question is about the data that you use to quantify customer impact. And I think reading into that question is, there's sort of this need to be able to bring very accurate data to the sales discussion, or you're going to get shot down and it'll undermine your whole value proposition. What advice do you have about, especially on the sales side, using data? Do you need to have the very accurate, complete data to have that type of discussion with a customer?
Yeah. Again, it's a pretty good question, that one. And there's been quite a lot of discussion around the data that salespeople need to have in order to craft meaningful and powerful value propositions. I think it goes back to what I said a little while ago about this discovery process. You've got to ask the right questions. You've got to ask them in such a manner that you're going to optimize the likelihood of getting the response. Now, it could be that your customer is a bit sort of suspicious of the reasons for this, and it may take a few meetings before you can get down into the nitty-gritty here. But you can't really build a proper economic argument unless you've got some pretty reliable data. And the data that matters to the customer is the customer's data. So if you come in with data that you have hallucinated from somewhere else, the customer's not going to be particularly impressed with that. If you come in with information that is just produced by some third-party organization, a consultancy organization, for example, or a specialist technical organization, yeah, of course, that's going to make a lot more sense than if you were to come up with your own answers. But there's no question about it. If you can get information from your customer, and that information which is relevant in this context, that's the best data that you can have. Do you need the data? Yes, ideally you do. If the customer wants your data, then it might be viable to use industry estimates instead. But you have to ask the question, why are you not getting that information? Are you speaking to the wrong kind of customer? Are you speaking to the price buyer who frankly doesn't give a damn about your value, and will we have a term in the UK called rubbish it. They will rubbish your arguments simply because they are trying to squeeze you down on price. I tend to walk out of those sorts of meetings. But if you have a value buyer or a partnership buyer, people who really do understand the value, once you've explained it to them, they understand why you need it, what you need, and will cooperate with you in doing that. One of the companies that we have experience in working with, I won't tell you the name of the company, but we've put in a case study at the back of our value-based pricing book. This is a company that's in logistics, and they did something pretty radical. They realized that they were in a very commodity market, shipping items from here to there. People were not prepared to pay any more than a commodity price for this. But what they did discover was that there were a few people who realized that logistics was an absolutely crucial part of their strategy, and they wanted to focus on them. So basically what they did was they moved out of the price buying landscape entirely, and they sacked the salespeople. That was pretty radical. And instead of having salespeople selling perhaps commodity items, they had the senior managers in the company sitting down with the senior managers in the client and crafting a 3 or a 4 or a 5 year deal, which was based on the delivery of sustainable value. This company will get up and walk out if procurement come into the room. They have such a powerful focus on delivering and negotiating on customer value.
All right. One last question, and this is on any tips for how to quantify the emotional contribution.
Oh boy, that's a cracker. Yeah, it's the question that keeps coming up. Well, first of all, let me say that quantifying emotional value is very, very difficult to do because people's emotions change almost with the number of cups of coffee that they buy or drink. It's not possible to be as objective with emotional contribution estimation as you can be with things like revenue gain and cost reduction. It doesn't work that way. And yeah, sure, there are tools that you can use. There are tools like conjoint analysis, and there are tools like Van Westendorf, and there are tools like adaptive hierarchy process. All of those are tools that are useful to give you a quantification. But you're on a risky ticket if you were to say, right, this is what the conjoint says that your peace of mind should actually be worth, Mr. Customer. Because the customer will then say, well, you know what, I actually don't agree with you. Where do you go from there? That's a tricky one. I think what I've been saying to people recently is when they're building their value-based price, we know that what's going to happen is when they are negotiating a final price, they're going to get into what we call the negotiation corridor. And that's the difference between the next best competitive alternative price and the maximum value-based price. And we negotiate somewhere within that. If we were able to inflate the maximum value-based price by our estimate of what the emotional contribution is worth, that gives us a wider corridor within which we can negotiate. And we can also use the emotional arguments to say, how would you feel, Mr. Customer, if you don't have to get up out of your bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and go and sort out a problem back in the office or the factory? What's that worth to you? Is it worth a lot to you in peace of mind? Not many tips on how to quantify it because it is essentially unquantifiable. But you can use the emotional arguments as a basis of enhancing the attractiveness of your economic case.
All right, well said. So I think that's all the questions we have for now, but if other questions do come up, you have Harry's contact information here on the slide, and we will also be posting this Q&A section on our blog, and if other people want to add on to that, they can certainly get in touch with us via the Leverage Point blog. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. We will have both the slides for download as well as a recording available next week sometime, so look for that. And again, thanks very much, Harry, for your time. Yeah, it was really great. Really great. So again, thanks everyone for watching. Until next time.